in the bustling heart of Disney World, where laughter fills the air and dreams are promised to come true. A chilling mystery began that would haunt investigators for years. On what was supposed to be an ordinary family trip, 8-year-old Abigail Hayes vanished without a trace. No alarms, no witnesses who could provide clear answers, only confusion and disbelief. Families around her continued enjoying parades and fireworks, never realizing a child had disappeared in plain sight. For Abigail's parents, a day designed for joy turned into a nightmare that never seemed to end. Then, 9 long years later, an unexpected discovery reignited the case. Abigail's doll, almost perfectly intact, appeared in a place no one ever imagined. Was it a sign? A clue? Or a cruel reminder of what was lost? This is the untold story of Abigail Hayes. Subscribe and comment your thoughts. Only on Untold Secrets Daily. The summer sun poured over Orlando, painting the streets with a golden glow as thousands of families flooded into the magical world of Disney. It was July, the busiest season of the year, when the parks were alive with parades, music, and the unmistakable joy of children clutching Mickey-shaped balloons. For the Hayes family, it was a long-awaited vacation, a rare chance to escape the routine of everyday life and create lasting memories. 8-year-old Abigail, with her wide hazel eyes and curly brown hair, carried her favorite doll everywhere she went. To her, the doll wasn't just a toy, it was a constant companion, a tiny anchor of comfort in a sea of noise and color. Her parents, Michael and Diane, walked hand in hand, believing Disney was the safest place on Earth for their daughter. Every ride felt like magic, every firework like a dream come alive. The park itself was overwhelming in scale, stretching across themed lands where fairy tales met futuristic visions. Abigail's laughter echoed through Main Street as she begged her parents for photographs in front of Cinderella's castle. Tourists bustled around, cameras flashing, music swelling from hidden speakers. It was the kind of day every child imagines, filled with cotton candy, endless rides, and the dazzling illusion that nothing bad could ever happen in a place so enchanted. Yet beneath the sparkle, the enormity of the crowd carried shadows of vulnerability. In a sea of strangers, it was frighteningly easy for one child to vanish, unseen, unnoticed. As evening approached, the sky shifted to a deep orange, and families gathered for the famous nighttime parade. Abigail clutched her doll tightly, her small fingers digging into its soft dress, as floats illuminated the park in vibrant colors. For her parents, the glow of lights and music was reassurance. For Abigail, it was pure wonder. They had no reason to worry, no thought that danger could lurk behind the smiles of fellow tourists. To them, Disney was perfection, a sanctuary wrapped in fantasy. But for all its magic, even Disney could not stop what was coming. That night would mark the beginning of a mystery that would stretch across nearly a decade. For the Hayes family, the trip to Disney had been more than a vacation. It was a promise fulfilled. Michael had worked extra shifts at the auto shop, and Diane had carefully saved from her part-time teaching job just to afford this special getaway. Abigail, their only child, had been counting down the days on a calendar she kept by her bed. Each morning, she'd draw a star on another square, waiting for the moment when she would finally meet her favorite princesses and ride the spinning teacups she had only seen on television commercials. For her, Disney wasn't just a theme park. It was the dream every child held close, a place where reality and imagination merged. Abigail was an imaginative child, often creating elaborate stories with her doll, speaking to it as though it were her closest friend. At home, she would set up pretend tea parties, inviting her parents and her doll to sit at the table. Now, inside Disney, she carried that same joy, treating every ride like part of a fairy tale adventure. Her parents smiled as they watched her excitement, relieved to see their little girl so happy after months of hard work and planning. They took photographs at nearly every stop. Abigail posing in front of the castle, feeding ducks near the pond, waving during the parade. In each picture, her doll appeared too, always tucked safely under her arm. Other families noticed the child's enthusiasm, and some even commented on how sweet she looked, a little girl lost in the wonder of childhood. Everything seemed so normal, so perfectly ordinary. The day unfolded with laughter, snacks, and the promise of fireworks later that night. Abigail's parents never imagined these happy moments would soon become their most painful memories. The doll, once a simple toy, would eventually transform into a haunting symbol of everything they lost. At that moment, though, they knew nothing of tragedy. They believed they were living one of the happiest days of their lives, unaware that the magic around them was about to fracture into a nightmare they could never escape. As twilight settled over Disney World, the atmosphere shifted from playful sunshine to the dazzling glow of evening. The night parade was moments away, and the crowd thickened along Main Street, everyone eager for the spectacle. Families lined the curbs, children on shoulders, music swelling in the distance. Abigail held tightly to her doll, its fabric dress glowing faintly under the streetlights. Her parents, distracted by the crowd, adjusted their bags and searched for a good viewing spot. In the chaos of thousands gathering, the unthinkable happened. Abigail slipped from their side. At first, Michael and Diane thought nothing of it. Children often weave through legs to get a better view. But when Michael called her name and saw no little face looking back, a flicker of unease began. Diane scanned the immediate area, expecting Abigail to reappear within seconds. She didn't. Instead, the crowd grew louder, the parade music began, and the sea of strangers swallowed every detail. Abigail was gone. Witnesses later recalled small fragments. A little girl with curly hair spotted near the candy shop, another seen near the restroom stalls. But nothing was certain. One woman thought she saw a man holding Abigail's hand, guiding her through the crowd, but she admitted later she couldn't be sure if it was the same child. In the midst of flashing lights and costumed characters, reality blurred. Michael's voice rose, desperate, shouting Abigail's name over the music. Diane pushed through families, tears already forming as panic took hold. They retraced every step they had taken, checked nearby shops, even asked Disney staff if anyone had seen their daughter. But the responses were all the same. No one had noticed. In the happiest place on earth, their daughter had simply vanished. Security was alerted within minutes, announcements made quietly to staff without alarming guests. But even with trained personnel and cameras scattered across the park, Abigail's movements seemed to evaporate into thin air. One moment she was holding her doll, the next she was gone. All that remained was confusion, disbelief, and the first horrifying realization that something was terribly wrong. The disruption was so sudden, so complete, that her parents could barely comprehend it. Disney, with its reputation for safety and control, became a maze of fear. The laughter of other children felt cruel, the fireworks above mocking their desperation. Within half an hour, the Hayes family's dream vacation had collapsed into a nightmare, a mystery that would stretch across 9 long years, anchored by a single question. What happened to Abigail Hayes that night? The moment Michael and Diane realized Abigail was missing, their world collapsed into chaos. Michael pushed through the crowd, shouting her name, his voice cracking with panic. Diane's hands trembled as she clutched the empty space where her daughter had been just seconds earlier. Parents around them looked confused, some sympathetic, but most were too absorbed in the parade to understand the urgency of what was happening. The music and lights that enchanted others became a cruel barrier, drowning out their cries. Within minutes, they rushed to the nearest Disney staff member, begging for help. Radios crackled to life, and quietly, without disrupting the parade, security teams spread across the park. Trained eyes scanned crowds, exits, and restrooms, yet no trace of Abigail appeared. Her doll, which was always with her, was gone as well. That detail only deepened the dread. The Hayes family was escorted to a secure room near the front gates while teams combed the park. Michael paced like a caged animal, demanding answers. Diane sat slumped in a chair, tears streaking her face, repeating Abigail's name like a prayer. The minutes stretched unbearably, each one adding weight to their terror. Disney's reputation for safety was legendary, but in that moment, the park felt like a labyrinth of shadows where a child could vanish without a sound. By the end of the parade, announcements had quietly circulated among staff to monitor exits and question anyone leaving with a child who matched Abigail's description. Families were discreetly approached, but nothing surfaced. Surveillance cameras were checked, yet the footage was confusing, crowded, and inconclusive. At 10 p.m., nearly 2 hours after Abigail had disappeared, the police arrived. Officers questioned the parents, collected details of Abigail's height, clothing, and the distinctive doll she carried. Patrols spread across the park, searching behind rides, food stalls, and storage areas. They interviewed staff, tourists, and vendors, but each lead dissolved into frustration. The sheer size of Disney World turned the search into an overwhelming task. For Michael and Diane, the night felt endless. They clung to hope that Abigail had simply wandered off and would be found asleep on a bench or lost in a shop. But as midnight passed and the park closed, hope dimmed. Abigail was nowhere to be found. The happiest place on earth had transformed into the darkest nightmare imaginable. By dawn the next morning, Disney World had transformed from a place of enchantment into the epicenter of one of the most intensive searches the park had ever seen. Police officers, security teams, and volunteers fanned out across the sprawling property. Every restroom, ride area, and backstage corridor was checked. Employees combed through storage facilities and staff-only zones. Yet there was no sign of Abigail Hayes or her doll. The sheer size of Disney World, which was designed to feel endless and immersive, now worked against investigators. The park was a labyrinth, and any trace of the missing child had vanished into its depths. Detectives immediately began interviewing witnesses. Some visitors claimed to have seen a girl matching Abigail's description near the candy shop. Others thought they saw her heading toward the restrooms. But none of the accounts were consistent. A single statement suggested a man had been walking with a young girl, but the witness admitted she couldn't be sure in the chaos of flashing lights and costumed characters. The leads blurred into uncertainty, forcing investigators to pursue every angle, no matter how faint. The Hayes family was questioned repeatedly, though suspicion quickly shifted away from them. Their panic and heartbreak were undeniable, their lives suddenly consumed by endless police interviews, press inquiries, and sleepless nights. Diane collapsed multiple times during questioning, while Michael's anger burned through his exhaustion. He demanded answers, begged for more officers, and refused to leave the park until Abigail was found. As days turned into weeks, the media descended on the case. News outlets broadcast Abigail's smiling face nationwide, turning the story into a haunting reminder that even the safest place on Earth wasn't immune to tragedy. The public, shocked and horrified, began speculating wildly. Some believed Abigail had been abducted by a stranger. Others whispered darker theories involving staff members or hidden corners of the park. Every tip that came in, whether from Florida, neighboring states, or across the country, was pursued. Yet time and again, the results were the same: dead ends. Investigators examined security footage frame by frame. But in 1990s technology, resolution was poor, angles were limited, and the massive crowds obscured key details. Detectives thought they saw a glimpse of Abigail in one frame, near a group of tourists, but the image was too grainy to confirm. The possibility that she had been led quietly out of the park seemed both plausible and terrifying. Meanwhile, search efforts extended beyond Disney. Hotels, bus stations, and airports in Orlando were canvassed. Authorities checked with taxi drivers, questioned store owners, and distributed thousands of missing child flyers. Abigail's doll became a central focus, described in detail to every officer, every volunteer, every passerby. "If you see a child with this doll, call immediately," posters read. But the doll was nowhere to be found. The FBI soon joined the investigation, adding resources and expertise. Behavioral analysts crafted a profile of a potential abductor, likely someone familiar with crowds, patient, and able to exploit chaos. The profile pointed toward a predator who might have blended seamlessly into Disney's bustling environment. Despite the relentless effort, weeks slipped into months. Leads dried up, witnesses faded, and memories blurred. Abigail's case began to resemble countless other unsolved disappearances. Except this one carried the cruel irony of happening in a place marketed as the happiest and safest on Earth. For the Hayes family, every day without answers deepened the wound. For investigators, the lack of progress turned the case into a haunting obsession. By the end of that year, with no breakthroughs, authorities faced the grim possibility that Abigail might never be found. Yet even in failure, the search had only just begun. This was no ordinary case. It was a mystery that would stretch on for nearly a decade, defined by silence, shadows, and a single missing doll. As months turned into years, the search for Abigail Hayes faded from daily headlines to occasional reminders tucked inside anniversary news reports. The bright posters that once decorated Orlando's bus stops and storefronts grew weathered, their colors fading under the Florida sun. For the Hayes family, however, the pain never dulled. Every empty chair at the dinner table, every holiday without Abigail, became a cruel reminder of what had been taken from them. Michael refused to let go. He kept her bedroom exactly as it had been, the bed neatly made, the doll's empty space on the pillow haunting him every night. He joined support groups, spoke at events about missing children, and pressured law enforcement to keep the case active. Diane, by contrast, withdrew from the world. Once a warm and social teacher, she found herself unable to face classrooms full of children who reminded her too much of the daughter she had lost. Her health began to decline, weighed down by grief. Investigators cycled in and out of the case. New detectives reviewed the files, hoping fresh eyes might reveal overlooked clues. But the evidence remained frustratingly thin. The initial chaos at Disney had provided little to work with, and as time passed, leads grew colder. Witness memories became unreliable, often contradictory, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. The case eventually slipped into the grim category of cold. It wasn't closed, but active investigation slowed to a crawl. Files were boxed up, stored in evidence rooms, waiting for something, anything, that might bring clarity. For the community, Abigail's disappearance became a cautionary tale whispered among parents. Disney tightened its security measures, introducing stricter protocols for missing children, but the shadow of the incident lingered. Despite the silence, the Hayes family never stopped hoping. Each anniversary, Michael lit a candle in the window, a beacon meant to guide Abigail home. 9 long years passed this way, years filled with unanswered prayers and empty promises. And then, just when it seemed the mystery would remain unsolved forever, a discovery shattered the silence and reignited the case. A single object, almost perfectly preserved, would bring Abigail's name back into the light. Her beloved doll. It was the spring of 2004 when the silence surrounding Abigail's case was broken. A construction crew, tasked with clearing an abandoned storage facility on the outskirts of Orlando, stumbled upon a dusty box tucked into a forgotten corner. Inside, beneath layers of old clothes and discarded toys, lay a doll. At first glance, it appeared ordinary. Faded fabric, a slightly cracked porcelain face. But investigators would soon confirm it was no ordinary find. It was Abigail's doll, the same one she had clutched tightly in every photograph, the same one described in countless police reports. The discovery was nothing short of electrifying. For 9 years, no evidence had surfaced. Now, suddenly, here was a direct link to the missing girl. The doll was sent immediately to the state crime lab. Forensic experts handled it with meticulous care, documenting every fiber, every trace of dust, every potential clue preserved by chance. Under ultraviolet light, faint smudges appeared on the doll's dress. Tests revealed partial fingerprints, too degraded for immediate identification, but enough to warrant further analysis. Fibers found on the doll's fabric didn't match Abigail's clothing from the day she disappeared. These foreign fibers suggested the doll had been handled and possibly kept in another environment. Soil particles embedded in the seams indicated it had been stored in a damp, underground location at some point. Each finding added layers of intrigue, pointing to movements and hiding places that investigators had never considered. For the Hayes family, the news was overwhelming. Michael's hands shook as he was shown photographs of the doll. Diane wept uncontrollably, torn between hope and horror. The doll's return confirmed that Abigail had carried it after leaving her parents' side, but it also raised impossible questions. Why had the doll resurfaced after so many years? Who had hidden it? And most haunting of all, why return only the doll, not Abigail? Detectives saw the breakthrough as both an opportunity and a trap. The doll might hold the key to unraveling the mystery, or it might be a calculated move by whoever had taken Abigail. A cruel reminder designed to torment the family further. Still, investigators pursued every lead. The location of the discovery was mapped in detail, and surrounding properties were searched for signs of long-forgotten activity. Neighbors were interviewed, though most remembered little about who had once rented the storage space. The case, long considered dormant, surged back into public view. News stations covered the discovery relentlessly, reigniting national attention. Experts debated the meaning of the doll's condition, while communities across the country once again whispered Abigail's name. For investigators, this single object became more than a clue. It was a lifeline, a chance to follow new threads and finally pierce the darkness surrounding Abigail Hayes. The doll, silent and haunting, spoke volumes without words. The forensic analysis of Abigail's doll soon revealed details that would change the course of the investigation. For weeks, technicians worked patiently, using the latest tools to extract every possible clue. What they uncovered was as shocking as it was unsettling. The fibers pulled from the doll's dress were traced to a type of carpet no longer manufactured, but common in certain Florida motels during the mid-1990s. Investigators scoured records and located several businesses that had once used the same material. This detail, obscure yet undeniable, placed the doll inside a specific environment, one that had likely been used to conceal Abigail after she vanished. More disturbing were the soil samples embedded deep within the doll's seams. Geologists confirmed that the particles matched a mixture unique to construction zones near Kissimmee, an area less than 20 miles from Disney. For detectives, this finding suggested the doll had been buried or hidden underground, only to resurface years later. The idea that Abigail might have been kept in that region tore open painful possibilities. The partial fingerprints, though incomplete, were enhanced digitally. Analysts compared them against national databases, and while no definitive match was made, the prints suggested an adult male with distinctive ridge patterns, evidence that at least one unknown individual had handled the doll. Combined with the motel fibers and soil traces, investigators realized they were looking at a carefully orchestrated disappearance, one that involved planning and concealment. For the Hayes family, the reveal was bittersweet. The doll, once a symbol of Abigail's innocence, had transformed into a silent witness of her fate. Michael clung to the hope that these revelations meant answers were finally within reach. Diane, however, struggled with the cruel reality that the object her daughter had loved most now carried the weight of unimaginable secrets. National media seized upon the forensic breakthroughs, broadcasting every detail. The public's interest reignited, pressure mounted on law enforcement, and new tips poured in. At last, after 9 years of silence, the case of Abigail Hayes felt alive again. The doll had spoken, and investigators were determined to listen until the mystery of her disappearance was fully revealed. In the months that followed the doll's discovery, investigators pursued every lead with renewed determination. Old case files were reopened, forgotten witnesses re-interviewed, and forensic evidence re-examined through the lens of new technology. For the first time in nearly a decade, hope replaced despair. While no immediate arrest was made, the doll provided a tangible thread, one strong enough to weave together fragments of testimony and evidence that had long seemed useless. For Michael and Diane Hayes, the breakthrough was both healing and devastating. They attended press conferences, urging the public to come forward with any information. Michael, once weary and silent, found his voice again, determined to honor his daughter by refusing to let her memory fade. Diane, though fragile, began to share Abigail's story with advocacy groups, speaking for other families who knew the torment of not knowing. The doll had not brought Abigail back, but it had restored their fight for answers. The community rallied too. Candlelight vigils were held outside the Hayes home. Volunteers organized fundraisers for missing children's charities in Abigail's name. For neighbors and friends who had carried the weight of silence for years, the new momentum felt like a release. A reminder that justice, however delayed, was still possible. Though the investigation remained ongoing, the emotional closure came in unexpected ways. The Hayes family finally placed the doll, carefully preserved in a glass case, in a local memorial dedicated to missing children. It stood not only as a symbol of Abigail's innocence, but also as proof that even the smallest artifact could carry the power to move hearts and reignite hope. By the 10th anniversary of Abigail's disappearance, her story had become more than a case file. It was a testament to resilience, persistence, and the unbreakable love of a family who refused to forget. While answers were still being sought, Abigail's name lived on, etched into community memory, a constant reminder that justice might bend but could never be broken forever. Abigail Hayes' story remains one of haunting mystery and heartbreaking loss, yet it also stands as a reminder of hope, resilience, and the determination to seek truth no matter how many years pass. A single doll, preserved through time, became the voice that reignited a case long thought forgotten. As we reflect on her journey, we remember that behind every headline is a family still waiting, still fighting. If you believe these stories must continue to be told, make sure you subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and join us here on Untold Secrets Daily.